4 months. 4 months I've been itching, fiending, foaming at the mouth to make an Attack on Titan video. I think I may have a problem. So let's relieve that problem by dedicating our hearts and soul together by analyzing the third Attack on Titan opening, and by far one of the most popular AOT openings of all time. But does this opening deserve the hype surrounding it online? Well, the only way to find out is going frame by frame and finally breaking down. We begin our dedication with a white flash, revealing a hyper-detailed statue of a woman in robes with a crown of roses cradling a baby close to her chest. Now, if we really, and I truly do mean really want to reach the top shelf, we could vaguely make the argument that this mother and son are a metaphor for the destructive bond between Ymir and Eren, as we soon find out that the statue is actually fragmented with what even appears to be blood splattered underneath the specific piece of rubble, which is very similar to how Ramsey and Halil were crushed during the rumbling. But even I think that's a little too much overanalyzing of Attack on Titan.
Say that again?
What the statue is supposed to represent, however, is the very obvious bond between mother and child, as we'll soon find out that the value of bonds will be a key theme of this opening. The use of roses for the statue's crown also further accentuates the theme of bonds, as roses are often used in literature to represent love and also royalty if we were to backpedal to the far-fetched Ymir theory. The statue could even be a nod towards the Virgin Mary, celebrating the miraculous birth of Jesus due to the very similar robes depicted on the statue, which I mean again with the Ymir and Eren parallels, plus again the shell looks like something out the rumbling. Although I feel like I'm pulling a bit of a Zack Snyder here. As mentioned before, the camera pulls back to progressively reveal the location of the statue, which appears to be Titan territory on first glance. But if we take a closer look, we can see multiple buildings in the background, as well as the obvious pavement, which would actually place the scene inside the walls rather than outside. More specifically, either the Trost District, as this building to the side is fairly reminiscent of the Trost HQ building, or possibly inside the interior of Walsina. You can also make out a very nondescript person about to be ripped to shreds by the surrounding Titans. Even a dopey-eyed Titan Easter egg. Neat, I guess. But the most integral detail is how the title has been updated to indicate the fact that this is indeed Attack on Titan Season 2. Who would have guessed? Wow. Physically pushing past the title drop, a large crowd of people look on in horror as a horde of Titans come into focus, and a very similar visual to Armin's lore dumps from early Season 1, which combined with the very minimal color palette of grey and red, emphasizes the dread of Titans continuing their attack on humanity, which will unknowingly reach new heights with the second season, giving rise to our valiant main character to prepare for battle by first equipping the Odium Gear's harness. Eren being poised specifically in front of a window symbolizes his need to be set free within the walls, and with a clear ray of sun shining down upon him, could also be a metaphor for the seemingly bright future ahead for the Scouts' pursuit of freedom, especially given how Season 1 ended and how close Erwin is to uncovering the identities of the armored and colossal Titans. The fact the window is spliced into panes gives the illusion of prison bars to emphasize how Eren feels imprisoned behind the titanic walls of Paradis, but may also be slight foreshadowing to how the main cast goals would differ over the course of Season 4, with Eren taking the self-destructive route, while the rest of the cast aim for a more diplomatic way of obtaining true freedom. Again, that might be overanalyzing, but also maybe not, considering the ending for the season shows the rumbling, and around the time of Season 2's release, the declaration of war would have happened in the manga, so pick and choose what you will. The significance of the basement key and frame acts as a reminder to the audience as to where the series is ultimately heading, because if you'll recall, there was a whopping 4 years in between the release of Seasons 1 and 2, so having the key so prominent at the beginning of the opening acts as a clever way of reminding the viewer of the Scout's ultimate goal, and again in combination with the sunshine metaphor, points towards a bright future, towards Eren's goal of reaching the basement, even if there lies a massive roadblock ahead towards the end of Season 2. However, with every hopeful scene in Attack on Titan, there must be a tenfold increase of disparity, with the camera positioned atop a hill as two Titans continue forward through the desolate landscape, which is an obvious representation of death. The focus on the setting sun in the background may also be an indicator for new beginnings, as the Scouts would learn that there is in fact a correlation between humans and Titans at the end of Season 2, marking a new beginning in their journey towards understanding the truth of humanity's origins. However, the symbolism for death is further bolstered by the camera pulling back to reveal almost like an army of Titans marching through the wasteland, which could act as a visual metaphor for the upcoming so-called Titan War between Marley and Paradis, as well as linking back to the rumbling visuals from earlier, even if I was only half joking. We fall back to the barracks to find Mikasa also preparing for combat by slipping on a boot and fixing her iconic red scarf. Also take note of how her head is deliberately cut out of frame in both shots, as well as the contrast between the sunlight from the nearby window and shadows, which symbolizes her almost indifference to witnessing death and destruction on the battlefield, as well as her contrasting worldview of how the world is a cruel but beautiful place. which is fittingly followed up by a group of titans just absolutely decimating a town, which if you pay close attention to the background, you can just barely make out one of the walls, shrouded by a thick layer of smoke. Once again, the rumbling parallels are incredibly strong, as the nearby buildings are set on fire by the steam emitted from the pure-blooded titans, which are a very obvious stand-in for the rumbling's wall titans, as the colossal titan is obviously the only titan with a high enough body temperature to physically set fire to its surroundings. This senseless destruction causes the rest of our main cast to rally together to fight back against the Titan's relentless forces, with Jean preparing in the foreground, Reina entering from the left of the screen rallying everyone together, where Bertolt not so far behind, and this cute character moment in the background with Sasha helping Connie set up his ODM gear. There's little moments like this that go a long way towards humanizing our main cast. We follow up with a short sequence of Levi preparing his cravat, an impressive tilt up from behind Irvin, who overlooks unnamed scouts getting prepared for battle. The camera tilting upwards also establishes Irvin as a dominant figure within the scouts, and the fact he's facing away from the camera could be interpreted as a metaphor for how Irvin keeps his cards close to his chest, as he tends to only reveal his plans when the situation becomes too dire, such as in the case of the scouts cornering Annie within the Stowhouse district, as well as the fact that he kept his backstory secret for so long, as revealing any of its contents could result in him getting mysteriously vanished by the MPs. You could also make an argument that the sunlight directly hitting Irvin's front while his back is shadowed is a metaphor for how he's always teetering the line between right and wrong, such as again the Capture Annie operation and his tendency to strongly believe in blood sacrifice. The next sequence follows up with Hanji fixing her goggles and both Krista and Ymir having their hidden past projected behind them, with Krista in particular getting caught off guard as the metaphor for how Ymir surprised her during the snow expedition of knowing who she really is, which is again projected directly behind her. Comparing the amount of frame space that Krista and Ymir take up individually represents how tied down each of them are by their past, with Krista taking up barely any screen space while Ymir is fully centered in frame with a master close-up, an obvious indicator for how she resents eating Marcel when she was still a pure-blooded titan, which would have major repercussions at the end of season 2. And speaking of the Marleyan warriors, the armored titan walks into frame with a close-up of its right foot, followed by a wide shot of the titan striding through the plains, with steam being emitted by the armor in both shots, indicating that Reina only recently transformed, which lines up with the final battle of season 2. Although there's no one actually riding the armored titan, as well as the armor's hands being free, and the nonchalant manner of how he's walking through titan territory sort of contradicts that theory. But then again, in the next shot, the attack titan is getting toppled by a group of pure-blood titans, so IDK. It also appears that the titans are chewing through Eren Snape, which could be foreshadowing of how the final battle of season 2 was ultimately a loss for the scouts, which would explain the prideful stride of the armor titan. Literally an official Sojak, my god. That and also the fact that Eren doesn't transform during the final battle. Back inside the walls, we very briefly follow up on the Wall Titan post-credits scene from season 1's finale, and by follow up, I mean immediately brush past it to a crowd of people cheering on the scouts, indicating a very clear change in their reputation compared to the beginning of season 1. However, if we line both these scenes up with the lyrics, on that day, what kind of face was looking down on us, significantly changes the meaning of the scene, to be a lot more ominous, and in a way showcases how the fear of titans still looms over humanity even within the safety of the walls. From here, the scouts march towards the light at the end of the tunnel, an obvious nod at the fact that the majority of scouts end up dying in battle, but also a brilliant metaphor for how the scouts are moving forward ever so closer towards freedom within the walls, even if that freedom would come at an incredibly high price. An extreme close-up of a scout's ODM gear commences the next montage as we see a blade being readied, a titan devouring a civilian with very similar visuals to Garden no Yumiya, followed up by a scout equipping their ODM gear and another nod to Garden no Yumiya with a titan hitting a building with the Luigi Smash victory screen, while also chewing on an innocent bystander, which I guess is supposed to represent how random titan attacks are. After the senseless destruction, the scouts gather atop the wall to Aura Farm from left to right, with Levi, Hanji, Irvin, Mikasa, Eren, Armin, Jean, Sasha, and Connie. Also important to note how Krista, Ymir, and the warrior duo are absent from the team lineup, further highlighting how different their lives are to the rest of the main cast. More aura farming occurs with an extreme close-up of both Eren and Irvin, Hanji moving into frame, and Levi unsheathing one of his swords before a massive scene of the scouts charging toward a horde of titans, with the camera focusing on Eren's position on top of the wall before leaping into action, revealing a shit ton of bad CGI titans, dear god. Although thankfully, the opening immediately makes up for this sin with a crossfade to the Wings of Freedom flying proudly at full mast, fading into another scene of the scouts dedicating their hearts and souls to the cause above the proud display of flags, pride flags even, with Reina, Bertolt, Eren, Jean, Armin, Connie, and Sasha's elbow proudly in display, as well as each scout's heart highlighted in red, which will become important towards the end of the opening. The fact each heart is glowing may also be a representation for each member's burning dedication to the Scout Regimen, as well as their burning desire to fight for freedom, as the lyrics felt away. Although for Rhaina and Bertolt, I guess this would be their dedication to Marley and their will to carry out the mission to find the Founding Titan. A white flash hits us again like in the beginning of the opening, but this time instead of a statue, we're instead shown a baby holding their parent's hand. And while it's never revealed who this parent and child are, we can presume that this is supposed to be Grisha with baby Eren due to the vaguely matching clothes from later in season 4. And with the present of Zeke later in the opening, it kinda links the Jaeger family together, but also not really. The sunshine metaphor applies here once again, but is a sign towards the baby's bright future. Although if the baby truly is Eren, then wouldn't exactly call that a super bright future in the long run. However, this peaceful moment is forcibly ripped away as a member of the garrison fires a cannon in close proximity to a titan, which appears to be Ragako village, given the area's importance in season 2. However, probably the most important piece of foreshadowing occurs next, as Bertolt activates the Colossal Titan's explosion ability. The way this house gets annihilated by the blast is also identical to this house in Shiganshina during season 3 part 2. As the steam blows away, the Colossal Titan towering in the center of the frame begins to topple the nearby mountain, causing debris to fly across the battlefield, in again a very similar fashion to Zeke hurling the boulders during the return to Shiganshina arc. Although with Jean and 2 other unnamed scouts skillfully evading the falling boulders as Mikasa wildly swings into the picture with an incredible display of animation as she dodges midair passing by Sasha on horseback. Mikasa continues to use Ultra Instinct to evade the flying debris so she can literally catch up with Eren, who she swings towards the armor titan hidden behind a large cloud of steam. God damn, let's pause for a moment to reflect on just how incredible that entire sequence was. My god, absolute peak AOT animation right there. Cinema. But the intensity of the battle doesn't end here, as Eren instinctively bites down on his tongue to transform in a very similar fashion to how he first transforms during the return to Shiganshina arc. A lot of surprising parallels in this opener. I guess it was too peaked with that 2 years. Although it's pretty cool that you can just barely see the crater created by Bertolt's nuke transformation. Nice attention to detail. Back on the ground, Eren in an incredibly feral manner rushes towards the armor titan right before ending on this incredible still of the 2 titan shifters about to clash. And again, I just love how almost animalistic Eren's attack titan is animated during this short sequence. It really does a superb job at capturing his unfiltered rage against the deceitful Marleyan duo. During the still, both titans' hearts are highlighted, showcasing each soldier's dedication to their beliefs and home country. For Rhaina, it's his dedication towards returning home to Marley with the founding titan in hand, whilst for Eren, it's his dedication to venturing beyond the confines of the walls to reach the sea, and later to free his people. The screen is then suddenly engulfed in a yellow glow, akin to a titan shifter transforming, as the hearts of various animals are highlighted through a montage, such as a Cape buffalo being attacked by a pack of lioness, a chameleon eating a beetle, an orca snacking on a fish, a squid hunting a herring, and a cicada going through metamorphosis, which is interrupted by a zoomed in shot of the beast titan about to hurl Misha's horse, followed by 2 hawks picking at a dead fox, a tarantula devouring a beetle, a hippo chomping on a crocodile, followed by 3 abnormal titans sprinting through the plains, followed again by an owl eating a mouse, a polar bear dragging a tuna, a fucking T-Rex fighting a Dimetrodon? Huh? Ymir in titan form biting a titan's nape, the crumbling Utgard castle, forgive me for the pronunciation of this next one, but an Anomalocaris Canadensis, that is definitely not right. Sasha off-screen shooting that 1 9-foot titan in the face, and finally 2 bacteria, with the smaller presumably about to get consumed. Now, what does any of that have to do with Attack on Titan, besides the titans obviously? Well, we could interpret this sequence a number of ways. First being that all creatures on Earth, both past and present, are linked by the primal desire to survive. The second, and possibly the most important, is that the cycle of violence doesn't just affect humans, but all of nature as a whole, as every type of consumption requires that one life dies to benefit another, whether that be a polar bear eating a tuna or a person eating a vegetable. Death is an unfortunate and prevalent factor that affects all walks of life, no matter how primitive or advanced. And nowhere is that more prominent than in the following sequence where the Beast Titan seemingly wipes out humanity alongside an elephant, a crocodile, a Parasaurolophus, a hippo, a giraffe, a T-Rex, a whale, a Mosasaurus, a camel, a zebra, a manta ray, a tuna, and either an emu or an ostrich. It's really hard to tell with all 3 pixels on screen. Which fades into the town from the very beginning of the opening, now destroyed and with nature reclaiming the land. Again, more rumbling parallels can be made here, but what this is most likely supposed supposed to represent is that again, death claims all forms of life, which is a little depressing, but when nature reclaimed the once populated district, it shows us that even in death, we are all linked by nature, as dead forms of life are essentially recycled to benefit the growth of new life. That's the almost unsettling beauty of nature, which is perfectly captured in the sequence. As the opening comes to a close, Eren appears inside his Titan Snape to a very similar short sequence from opening 2, although this time, Eren is surrounded by red, with the only other discernible color being his eyes, which are blue for some reason, most likely to create a stronger contrast between colors. The red surrounding Eren may also represent his rage from feeling betrayed by his once thought to be friends, as well as allies, Reina and Bertolt, with the blue of his eyes representing the clarity of what needs to be done next to fight back against the newly outed forces of Marley. Finally, the opening comes full circle as a white flash reveals the statue from the very beginning of the opening, now also reclaimed by nature, closing on a somewhat depressing but also beautiful note. Kind of like how the world is a cruel but beautiful place. Overall, I think I've definitely discovered a newfound appreciation for opening 3, outside of the hype moments in Aura, but I'm still going to die in the hill with this opening overhyped season 2. The season is a slow burner survival story. This opening is unfiltered dedication to Aura. I rest my case. See ya.